Hey friends, we're back again for more of Mrs. Katz and Tush. So in our last episode, we learned about these characters, Mrs. Katz and Larnell, and their relationship to this stray kitty named Tush. And we got to know a little bit more about why Mrs. Katz and Larnell have become such good friends and some of the things that they've shared with one another. Mrs. Katz has been sharing more about her life when she was younger, how she came to the United States, how she used to work in the garment district, just like the shirtwaist factory that you've all read about, and the beautiful traditions that Mrs. Katz is sharing with Larnell about her Jewish faith. So here we're going to learn a little bit more about their relationship with the little kitty Tush. So Mrs. Katz has adopted Tush, but doesn't really know how to take care of cats so much, and so Larnell's been helping out. As the weeks passed, let me turn this so you can see a little bit better. As the weeks passed, Larnell spent more and more time with Mrs. Katz. "Since you're almost family to me, Larnell," she said one day, I want you should come with me to say Kaddish for my Myron. I know you're not Jewish, but Myron would have liked you. You're such a person, Larnell." At the cemetery, she read from her book. Then she asked Larnell to put a small rock on top of Mr. Katz's headstone. "We do this to remember," she said softly. "Shalom, my Myron," she murmured and wiped tears from her eyes. On the way home, she announced, "Kugel, such a kugel I baked for you today, Larnell. Hurry, Tush will be worried for us," she said as they walked. When they got home, they called for Tush, but she didn't come. Then they looked everywhere. Suddenly, Mrs. Katz gasped. The window to the fire escape was open. "Oh no," she cried. "I forgot to shut this window before I left. Poor Buble. She has never been outside before. We'll find her," Larnell tried to reassure her. "She's been acting strange lately," Mrs. Katz said through her tears. "She's been trying to get out, but I was afraid that she would get hit by a car." "I'll find her, Mrs. Katz," Larnell said. "I won't let you down." It was getting dark. First, Mrs. Katz and Larnell looked around their building. They went everywhere into the neighborhood. They left notes on doors, telephone poles, and fences. They asked everyone who lived nearby, but no one had seen little Tush. That night, it stormed. There was rain, awful, awful rain. Mrs. Katz hardly slept as she thought about her little cat. She's such a person, such a person. What do you think that means when Mrs. Katz says that Myron was such a person, that Larnell is such a person, that the little Tush is such a person? Larnell worried most of the night too. What will Mrs. Katz do, he thought. Please, God, bring that little cat back to her, he said softly into his pillow. A loud knock came on the front door that awoke Mrs. Katz. It was Larnell's father and two neighbors. "Is this yours?" they asked. "My Buble!" Mrs. Katz exclaimed. "We found her in the back alley, soaking wet and hungry," Mr. Moore said. Thank you, Mrs. Katz said as she took Tush into her arms. I think it's interesting that at first Mrs. Katz didn't think that she was really interested in having a kitten, and Larnell convinced her, and and their experience together taking care of Tush is what helped them bond. And I wonder about whether or not Mrs. Katz has changed her mind about little Tush. And I'm just reminded about how good stories are often filled with characters who change over time. After a while, Tush no longer had the least desire to go outside. But she slept a lot, even when Larnell came over to play with her. It was at my Aunt Havilah's Passover Seder that I met Myron. Did you know that? Mrs. Katz asked as she looked at Larnell. What good times they were, with lots and lots of family. Now it's just me, she said softly. Could I have Passover dinner with you? Asked Larnell. I thought you would never ask, she exclaimed, as she hugged him so close. Such a Seder I'll prepare for you. And we'll stop there, friends. In the next episode, we'll learn a little bit more about Passover and what a Seder is, and we'll find out a little bit more about Tush, and we'll check in again with Mrs. Katz and Larnell's friendship. I would like to remind you that now our Storytime books are linked with our ELA focus lessons. So go right to Tuesday of your ELA lesson and you will find a question to answer about Mrs. Katz and Tush from this section that we just read. All right, friends, we'll see you next time.